During the height of the Cold War, humanity lived under a constant, chilling tension. Sirens wailed through city streets during nuclear drills. Families dug shelters in their backyards. Every newspaper headline carried one silent question: if the bombs fall, how do we survive? In that atmosphere of fear, governments didn't just design weapons, they designed ways to stay alive. And among the radiation meters, water barrels, and air filters, one humble invention quietly became the backbone of survival. A meal that needed no fire, no cooking, and no comfort. Only the will to live. It didn't look like much, just a dull tin stacked high in cold government warehouses. Inside were pale brown blocks, dry and dense as stone. No smell, no flavor, no warmth. But each one was a small guarantee that life could continue, even underground, even in the aftermath of a nuclear winter. These were called no-cook emergency rations, or, in official NATO documents, compressed survival biscuits. They were the quiet heroes of the nuclear era, built not to impress, but to endure. But the story of these rations began long before the Cold War. During World War II, pilots, sailors, and soldiers often found themselves stranded, adrift at sea, trapped behind enemy lines, or stuck in remote outposts. They needed emergency food that wouldn't spoil, wouldn't freeze, and wouldn't need a campfire to prepare. So, the Allies developed compact bars of flour, sugar, milk powder, and fat, compressed into dense, high-calorie bricks. Each bar could last for years and provide enough energy to keep a person alive for a full day. These early rations, like the American K-ration biscuits or the British Type D survival bars, became the blueprint for the Cold War's most critical food invention. By the 1950s, the fear of nuclear war reshaped everything. Civil defense planners realized that in the aftermath of a nuclear strike, even the simplest task, like boiling water, could be impossible. There would be no electricity, no fuel, no safe air to vent smoke. And so, the old wartime ration was reborn. This time, it wasn't for soldiers. It was for civilians. Families huddled in fallout shelters, office workers trapped underground, and air crews forced to land behind sealed borders. They called it the no-cook survival meal. The science behind it was as practical as it was brilliant. Flour for carbohydrates, soy protein for strength, vegetable oil and fat for warmth and slow digestion, and a bit of sugar or glucose syrup to bind it all together. The mixture was lightly baked and then compressed under massive pressure into solid blocks. Each one contained between 400 and 600 calories. Small, but powerful. Just 6 pieces a day could keep an adult nourished enough to work, ration water, and survive for weeks underground. It wasn't made to please the tongue. It was made to cheat starvation. But the food alone wasn't enough. In a damp bunker, moisture could ruin everything. So engineers focused on the packaging. They created airtight tins, nitrogen-sealed, with an inner chemical coating to block oxidation. These containers could survive extreme temperature swings, from scorching desert heat to Arctic cold. Tests proved that even after 20 years, unopened tins were still safe and edible. They were built not just to feed, but to outlast time itself. So, what did they taste like? By most accounts, the taste was forgettable. Something between sweet bread and chalk. Some described it as being like a very dry graham cracker. Others, like sawdust held together by syrup. But when you're surrounded by concrete walls with radiation just outside, taste doesn't really matter. Each bite meant another sunrise survived. This invention wasn't just about food, it was about a philosophy. In a post-nuclear world, fuel would be a danger. Fire meant smoke. Smoke meant attention. Every resource, every single breath had to be measured and saved. The no-cook ration symbolized independence from all of that. No fire, no pot, no noise, no smell. A person could open a tin in silence and survive another day without using a single drop of fuel. That was survival reduced to its most efficient form. Though designed for a nuclear war that never came, these rations were tested in real-world disasters. During floods in Europe in the 1960s and 70s, old civil defense stockpiles were quietly handed out to cut off villages. The results? The food worked perfectly. People survived for weeks on tins that had been sealed since the Eisenhower era. And decades later, when abandoned fallout shelters were reopened, scientists found tins still intact, with biscuits that, astonishingly, remained edible. The idea spread globally. The Soviet Union made their own version, called Galatani packets, richer, slightly sweet, and fortified with cocoa. They fed pilots, Arctic explorers, and even cosmonauts. Britain stockpiled millions of civil defense biscuits for its public shelters. The U.S. distributed survival biscuit Type C to coastal regions vulnerable to hurricanes. Every version carried the same design logic: maximum nutrition, zero preparation. It was the quiet standard of human survival. Even today, preppers and survivalists can recreate that brilliance. A modern version might use oats, wheat flour, peanut butter, honey, milk powder, and oil, baked at a low temperature to remove moisture, compressed tightly, and vacuum-sealed. It can last for years. The ingredients are humble, but the idea behind them remains revolutionary. A food that requires nothing from the world, yet sustains life within it. The Cold War survival meal teaches us one timeless lesson: simplicity is strength. In a time of immense fear, when civilization seemed just one spark away from extinction, scientists turned not to complex machines, but to a biscuit, something anyone could hold, store, and eat. It was proof that survival isn't about luxury, it's about adaptability. In that sense, these small beige blocks carried the same importance as any missile or bunker. While nations raced to build weapons that could erase cities, they also quietly built food that could preserve humanity. In the silent corners of Cold War history, these tins represented hope, that even if the worst happened, life could continue. They remind us today that true preparedness isn't about fear, it's about foresight. When everything else fails, power, comfort, technology, it's the simplest inventions that stand between us and extinction. Because sometimes the greatest tools of endurance aren't loud or heroic. They're quiet, plain, and waiting patiently in a tin marked emergency ration. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of forgotten history interesting, please give this video a like and subscribe for more stories from the past. Stay curious,